Hello, Professor Keto. It's Charlie Klausner here. Getting a haircut tomorrow, so sorry about the long hair. I am presenting this week. This is week 8. Let me see if I can get my screen share here. And I, again, have to speak into this kind of microphone. But so let's jump in. This is week 8, and I'm actually really excited because I studied for 3 years at Cornell, industrial and labor relations, and a lot of my coursework was on human resource management. So it's one of my great loves, and I worked a couple years afterwards in human resources management in California. So I was really excited when this week fell to me. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide here. Oops, present. There it is. So this is our introductory page. As you know, our team is made up of Jennifer Bauer, Charles Klausner, that's me, Louis Sheena Fulmer, and Susan Moyle. So this project was due on the 31st. Again, this is the Human Resource Management Week. Let's jump right in. So Human Resource Management and the definition. As you know, human resources is pretty self-explanatory, and it is the relationship of how our operations of our organizations work with the human capital or the employees. So a company or an organization's human resource department is usually responsible for creating, putting into effect, and overseeing policies governing the workers and the relationship of the organization with its employees. In the videos that were posted, we saw exactly how there's really that internal aspect of human resources and then the external. Per your advice, we're going to focus a lot on the internal in this project this week. And it's kind of been a cool trend over the last couple of years, just with the naming of human resources management. You've seen companies kind of deviate away from just calling it human resources, calling it human capital, talent management, and as the one that I always loved when I worked in Silicon Valley, Google calls them people ops or POPs. So I thought that was kind of cool. So again, that's just the high level introduction. I'm going to go ahead now and outline our presentation, starting with this introduction, this slide, and then we're going to go into a review of the top management at Starbucks. You can see who they are, what kind of backgrounds they have, as you noted in your video. We're going to look just briefly at a slide I put together on how I like to study personally human resource management. And when it comes to company analysis, with a before, a during, and an after when it comes to the hiring process, I'll focus on the internal aspects of Starbucks. And then the next section, section 3, will be the personnel, the policies and the procedures in these 6 strands: recruiting and onboarding, training, compensation and benefits, employee support, education, performance management, payroll, and then termination and closing of employment. Finally, we'll have one last slide for review and look ahead towards the next week with accounting and finances the following 2 weeks. So let's jump right in. Starbucks' top management, as we've highlighted before, Kevin Johnson is their president, CEO, and director. He also, as you can see here in the top right-hand corner, you have the president of the Americas, and that would fall under Kevin's team, as well as, you know, Howard Schultz is still a very important part of the Starbucks company, as he is a founder and one of the head honchos. However, you can see the list. It's a pretty robust list when it looks as to how they break it down. It's not quite as simplified as that organizational structure in the top right-hand corner. But we are going to focus in on 3 of these high-level, C-level employees. And we'll start with Roz. Oh, wait, let me see if this will work. Click the button, didn't work. Click it again, spacebar. There we go. Okay, I was waiting for this. So Roz Brewer. So Rosalind Brewer is the chief operations officer, director and group president of Americas. She was started as a scientist with Kimberly Clark paper products, and then in 2006 was appointed the regional VP for Walmart, and later promoted to the entire presidency of Walmart East. She then became the president and CEO of Sam's Club, which falls under the Walton Company. And then she joined the board in 2017, where she has really promoted a couple of initiatives, specifically her sustainability with the reusable cups, as well as getting better products that are not as wasteful. And then with a big response to the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, she helped champion the racial bias trainings, and then it was in response, which I'll talk about later, the Race Forward initiative that Starbucks put together. She's a graduate of Spelman University. So that's just a highlight of her and her experience. There's the next Chief Transformation Officer is Vivek Varma, who's worked in political campaigns. He has a background with Microsoft, and then he joined Starbucks in 2008. And he heads a multi-year cross-company initiative on behalf of partners and the environmental impact. Now, I think I mentioned it later, but employees at Starbucks are known as partners. So that's just kind of an interesting way they talk about their employees. So they use that partner term. He went to Swarthmore College, and I actually, doing some research on him, found out he is a super good and very talented tennis player. Has won some USTA above 50 things. So I play a lot of tennis, and that was kind of cool to see. So let's move on to the final spotlight on the management is Brady Brewer, who's their Chief Marketing Officer, who joined in 2001, has had various positions with Starbucks. He's actually the longest tenured VP that we highlight here. He helped define the Starbucks experience, and that kind of comes with that marketing, delivered new innovations with customer focus, touching products, delivery, and pickup. He's a certified coffee master, so that is one of the reasons why he's trying to make coffee a lot more agriculturally sustainable. And he is a University of Washington alum, so hometown kid, because as we know, Starbucks is headquartered in Seattle. So that's the top level. Oh, there we go. I don't want to change. There we go. So that's the top level management. This next section, so this section here, section 3, is where we're going to do a high level review of some of the personnel and policies and procedures of Starbucks, compare them versus their competitors, and then we'll do a deeper dive into each of these 6 components. So as I mentioned, Starbucks employees are known as partners, and they do have a lot of the standard environmental, and I mean environmental as the whole aspect of corporate world, when it comes to regulations and laws that they have to abide by. They do have a lot of the standard workplace laws and regulations, including global human rights, equal opportunity employment, and healthcare. So Starbucks has a global human rights statement that addresses the following. So this is really important, especially when it comes to sourcing their coffee, but child labor restrictions, equality and non-discriminatory practices, prohibition of forced or compulsory labor, right to free association, participation in collective bargaining, so unionism, and then the partner responsibilities. And Starbucks, like every company in the United States, has an equal opportunity policy that states that they cannot discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, physical and mental disability, sexual orientation, marital status, and all of that. Finally, they do support healthcare reform, and you'll see that Starbucks is big on getting their employees benefits. How does that compare to, let's say, Dunkin' Donuts? I don't know why it's not wanting to change for me. Well. So we can look at Starbucks, and then to see their kind of policies, we can compare them and contrast them against Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, Dunkin', and Peet's Coffees. Now, in looking at all these, you can see they're actually very similar when it comes to their HR policies and procedures. The one big difference is that Starbucks is a lot more transparent. They are a lot more open with sharing about their recruiting process and about kind of their whole view of human resources as a whole. And yeah, that's just a quick highlight level. You can read some of those there with regards to how they look at benefits and corporate social responsibility, as well as I think something that came out of Peet's Coffee that they probably shared from Starbucks was the compensation for college, which I'll talk a little bit about. Starbucks is a really great champion for getting their employees education and at a reduced rate because of their desire to help their employees grow. But again, not working. Let me click. Okay. Oops. That one was too fast. Okay, so what I really love about human resources is I actually was able to work on a little bit of the recruiting process for my last company. And I love getting the right people in the right places. So for Starbucks, what that looks like is their recruiting process. It's a very thorough, it's a very relatively long when it comes to the hiring processes for, let's say if you compare them against McDonald's, they take at least 3 weeks. When they do their interviews, they actually look for an ideal cultural fit. So they look for personality over the resume or the CV. So that's really cool to see that they're not just looking at, do you have experience, but whether are you going to fit in with the team, are you going to fit in with our main vision with regards to treating our customers with respect. They ask really simple questions and they have panel interviews. So I actually like that a lot because it gives more eyes to view a candidate and more opinions from different team managers and management leads so that they can really get the right candidate. One of the things I read was that you come in to the interview and you get a free drink, which is really cool. And I think that's just talks to their culture. And then they do ask, it's a fun and they want you to be yourself. So it's not so much they're grilling you about, all the behind the scenes operations of a service job like that, but yet they want to get to know you. A quote from the Starbucks site says, as a leader in hiring great talent, Starbucks has and will always look to create opportunities for our partners and customers in the communities we serve. And then they list some of their goals there with opportunity youth, refugees, and veterans and military spouses. So that kind of talks a little bit too into their diversity and inclusion, which I'll jump into in a couple slides. So the employee training, this is something when we were deciding on what company to choose, I really love to read about Starbucks and their employee trainings. They have their barista basics training, their shift supervisor, their retail management and district manager training programs. These are all super important when it comes to building that culture of success and building that customer service that we know Starbucks is known for, and really a huge part of their mission and vision. So I won't read through all of those, but you can see that their employee training is a huge thing when it comes to HR. It's maybe the most important thing because even if, it's just super important and they do a great job. The next slide is compensation and benefits. This is another great way to get in the right talent as well as attract the right talent. You can see health coverage, which I talked about earlier, life insurance, disability, and medical, dental, vision. Stock and savings, they have stock incentive plans, 401ks and retirements, generous company matching. They have paid time off for their employees, both retail and non-retail. So that's really showing that care for the employees. Parental leave, which is something that, a lot of, European nations around the world, or a lot of nations around the world have as mandated as part of their, government. Not in America, but Starbucks takes the lead on that and actually gives time off for parental leave. And here's the slide that I really love as a teacher and as someone who's been in education a long time. They offer eligible partnerships to learn a bachelor's degree with 100% tuition coverage through Arizona State's top-ranked online degree program. And this made the news many years ago when Howard Schultz talked about this. And it's just really cool that no matter what position they are in the company, they value education because they know great ideas and liberation can come from education. And finally, the commuter benefits. So that's a big one these days, especially with regards to having a strong triple bottom line and being a company that has social corporate responsibility to reduce their carbon footprint. 3D, employee support and performance management. So it was a little bit tougher to find internal information on their incentives programs, but they do have sales incentives that are corporate and manager led. One of the big ones when it comes to incentivizing people, especially when it comes to their workplace, pay them more. That always helps. And that's one of the things they do, and benefits as well as promotions. One thing they do, what I mentioned in the recruiting process, is they have a welcoming work environment. So they've, they lessened their work attire a couple of years ago to make it more friendly for employees so that they can wear kind of what they want. And these are just some of the ways that they manage performance, support their employees, and create those incentives for sales as well as just general prosperity of the company. Diversity and inclusion. So this is really, I don't want to say a hot topic in HR, but it really has come to the forefront, and it's a huge thing that is so important when it comes to having diverse and inclusive workplaces and environments for working. In fact, I read, that the companies that do not have diversity and inclusion plans are actually getting kind of destroyed when they don't plan for this, when they don't plan for being actually proactive when it comes to creating beneficial and prosperous work environments. So one of the things that they've really tried to do is eliminate biases in hiring. And then one thing that I love that I actually talked to with the Starbucks that I went to last week when I did the store visit is there's a store in Washington, D.C. by Gallaudet University that all of the baristas and all the partners working there know American Sign Language, which is a language I've been learning the last 5 years. So having that inclusive stores for those with disabilities is amazing, and that's just one way that I think companies can create a very diverse and inclusive environment. Their cafe practices, and then there's a quote in here I put in: "We actively hire individuals with disabilities and provide reasonable accommodations and assistive technologies that enable people to do their jobs." So that's one of the focuses. They do have 24% female C-suite leadership, and they have a very strong social responsibility. As I mentioned, the Race Together initiative and the Racial Bias Training Day. So those are just really great ways that they try to promote equality and equity in their stores. And I believe the racial bias training came out of the story that came out a couple years ago about the 2 Black men in Philadelphia that were asked to leave because they weren't buying anything. There was a big protest and PR backlash from that. And so now they're just being more proactive. And then they do, however, still have a problem with ageism, as a lot of the older employees have said that they felt that they've been maybe passed up on promotions to promote younger and more youthful people in the organization. So that is one thing that they still work on. Let's see, on the far right there's Starbucks actively creates and promotes an environment that is inclusive of all people and their unique abilities, strengths, and differences. So that's just their main focus in the diversity and inclusion realm. Payroll, really quickly, because I'm being long-winded here. Payroll is, weekly, bi-weekly. Tips are issued weekly, and they do have a service play during this COVID-19 crisis. Termination and closing, again, I'll kind of go through this quickly. Succession planning, exit interviews, and poor performance, economic situations, lack of demand. Starbucks will inevitably lay off employees. And they do offer some severance by benefits and help finding other jobs or jobs elsewhere in the organization. Finally, this is the last slide. So the review and the summary, as you can see, Starbucks places a huge amount of importance on their human resource functions with nearly 300,000 employees and I believe about 30,000 stores worldwide. It is imperative they focus on the hiring, training, developing, and growing of their workforce. Throughout this presentation, we've seen a definition of the overview, what is HR, and kind of spotlighted that, as well as looked at some of the top management, and then dug into each one of those Starbucks hiring practices, HR practices. and their new initiatives. So next week, we will dive more into accounting and the financial components. But I hope that this week hit all the marks, all the check marks for a great presentation. And we had a good time putting it all together. And thank you for listening. See you next time.